Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Oliver Polzin here, and he is part of the founding team of Meow Wolf, and he's also a naturalist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stewart, so much for having me.
Yeah. And we did some crazy work at Meow Wolf. I was teaching people yoga in Meow Wolf, and I actually started the show because of my time at Meow Wolf, and I was like, everybody's so creative here, and I want to figure out where is it coming from. And I started with the question: what is the relationship between stress and creativity? And then I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then I became unbounded, and now I just go wherever the wind takes us. And so, what have you learned about creativity recently? What are you studying in art right now?
So I'm actually in this postgrad program at SciArc in downtown LA. It's called Synthetic Landscapes, and
Wow.
this is sort of a divergence from my career so far, but a very welcome and exciting one. It's essentially looking at global scale climate and conservation issues through an architectural lens. So
Hmm.
SciArc is an architecture school, and their tagline is School of Architectural Thinking, which I think is a super compelling idea, especially in this age. Um, yeah, architecture exists in this place kind of between art and science. It's
Hmm.
definitely neither.
Hmm.
It has interesting kind of criticisms of both, uh, but the idea that we can sort of design projects, that we can design interventions is, I think, very interesting for climate and conservation stuff.
Interesting. It reminds me of brutalism, and brutalism. I've seen a lot of it in Argentina, or and not only Argentina and Brazil. And in Buenos Aires, it's interesting because it's a mixture of French houseman architecture with some brutalist stuff from the 1950s, 1960s, around that area. But Brazil is really interesting because Brazil has a lot of brutalism. And it has Brasilia, which is sort of just like a city that came out of nowhere, just like out there in the center of the country. I want to go there. I still haven't been there yet, and sort of just arose out of the mind space of a human being or a bunch of human beings at this interesting time in Brazilian history. What I like, and I think we talking about this, is like solar punk, right? Is like the brutalism mixed with the solar punk. That feels pretty cool, like with the vines and the greenery and the. Have you thought much about this area yet?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a really interesting case to be made for a biophilic culture right
Whoa.
now.
Okay.
Um, I think I see that expressed in solar punk for sure. But I think it's important to distinguish. There is a vein of thought. Paul Kingsnorth, actually, I think was the one that introduced me to this concept. I'm not sure if he came up with it, but he called it the difference between dark green and light green in ecology. And uh, this essentially was, the naturalist movement of the early 20th century had this amazing role, all these incredible contributors. But in the 70s, after the Earth Day movement and all of that sort of thing, there was this split that began to happen where suddenly it was about climate and it was about solar panels, and essentially it was about this sort of like electrifying, like it was about clean energy, it was about windmills, but all of that kind of was this proxy for maintaining our lifestyle, maintaining our 20th 21st century lifestyle, and the vision of conservation was really lost, the sort of naturalist vision.
Hmm.
So Kingsnorth says that the dark green is the older strain. That's where we're actually looking at biologic systems, we're looking at ecosystems, we're concerned for endangered species, whereas the bright green is this sort of capitalist overlay on that, where it sort of captured
Oh, interesting.
the movement.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk about conservation. It's going to be so interesting to try to conserve a lot of things. A lot of things already have died off. It's our, you know, it's people have talked about the Anthropocene, I think it is, that it just they were in it like the sixth great extinction event that we're already in, but now we have this crazy technology that's coming down the pipeline that will both um, accelerate a lot of that destruction, but also kind of give some people the tools to conserve.
Mhm.
What is your approach to conservation, particularly in this architecture sense?
Yeah, well, gosh, there's a lot to say about this. I guess I would begin, since you brought it up, just touching on AI. I think
Mm,
there's a lot of potential, and that's one of the things that I've been exploring here in school is the potential to vibe code, apps that help us to understand these massive systems,
yeah.
global scale systems. There's some really interesting work being done. Uh, Gosh, I can't remember the fellow's name right now, but he was on the Nate Higgins podcast recently, talking about satellite, observation and how you can, help prevent illegal logging and stuff like that through these like, geotiff oriented programs. Um, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, it's very fraught. AI is very fraught. And I imagine we'll come back to that topic. Conservation in general. Um, Honestly, I think it's one of these things that is very, very incredible, very beautiful about the United States that we had this sort of naturalist movement that, you know, from Roosevelt to John Muir, Annie Dillard. There's so many of these like incredible, like saint-like, you know, authors, thinkers, E.O. Wilson,
Mm,
and we have a public land movement. We have this
yeah.
ethic of some sense of the commons. Um, there's a lot of nitty gritty work that is being done every single day by people in conservation,
Yeah,
and
interesting.
you know, yeah, just despite the everything else that's going on, all the threats to it, all
Yeah.
of the industry trying to push. There are a ton of people that are actively learning about how to conserve, and uh, people that are working on the cultural aspects of how do we have a biophilic and ecocentric culture.
Mm,
And I think it's going to take all of these things put together. In terms of an architectural lens, I think it's important to be able to see all of these types, all of these, uh, different species of thought, uh, and how they contribute to the larger picture. And the solar punk thing, I think, is really compelling because it's kind of the ultimate point positive. It's like, well, let's not focus on. I mean, yes, there's a lot that we need to fix and change, but let's focus on the actual vision of what we want.
mm, yeah, I love that. That's why the art thing is so interesting to me because it's you've spent a lot of time, and we could go into your history if you want, of understand. I mean, were you always into painting? I've been seeing your Instagram stuff, and I've been seeing a lot of painting. Was that what you did at Meow Wolf, or what? Can you talk more about your history about how you came into art?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up with three artists and one architect for parents, so I was pretty deep in from a young age. I don't really remember the first time that I held a pencil. I was drawing and painting from you know probably two or three. Um, And I actually went to school for painting for a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Although I started in architecture, but
Huh.
I was just drawing every single night, and I was like, I'm going to lean into this. Yeah, Meow Wolf was actually sort of a divergence. It was sort of
Mm,
a weird experimental thing. After I graduated, I moved to Santa Fe on a whim, uh, and thought that I was just passing through town, and uh, ended up finding the nascent Meow Wolf collective within about less than 2 weeks, and I was just like, whoa, like
What year was this? What year was this?
this was January of 2010,
Oh wow. Okay. Well.
and yeah, I just kind of fell in love with these people that were devoted to an absurdity. And to be honest, like I didn't care that much about the art that was
Mm,
being made. It was way more about the like radical social experiment that was going on.
interesting.
Um, and I used it as an opportunity to explore different media. So, I was coming from painting, and I was still painting in my personal life, but I got really obsessed with mud. I dove straight into Adobe construction and started making this hut in our this exhibit called Habitats, and then later these massive caves for the due return.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Um,
I remember
and
those kids.
yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much, where we should go on with the story
So
exactly, but
yeah, so you've been doing it for a long time, and you've got this sense of like, okay, I got something in my head, I can put it out there, I can create this thing. And at first, you were doing that in the architecture sense, and then that led into sort of mud creation, using mud as this material. Man, there's a lot of places we can go from there. So uh, so uh, and then Meow Wolf happened, and you saw a huge part of that. And Meow Wolf is like the extreme of being able to visualize something, and not only for yourself but with a group of people.
mhm.
How did you in particular manage your creative vision in the midst of this radical experiment?
Hmm, that's a good question. I mean, even in those days, there was a strong biophilic
Hmm.
strain. Like I was always kind of obsessed with this, and I think that goes back to my childhood. Um, so I mean, I wanted to create some of what I was seeing in the outdoors, and at this point, I was now exploring northern New Mexico. Getting up into the mountains or down into the deserts.
Yeah.
Running in arroyos, and yeah, I mean the presence of the mud was so
Yeah.
profound to me. I
Totally.
remember one night after working on my mud hut, I drove home and I was driving up this road that was dirt on the side of Monte Sol, and I was just realizing like, oh my god, it's all mud. Like I'm just like on this like mud construction, and I don't know. I think I had a strong ability to connect a feeling with a vision, and then have that vision uh, with my painting ability. I would often create these, uh, concept art pieces essentially,
Mhm.
and then use that to form the design. Um, yeah, and I mean that went in a bunch of different directions. I think the early Meow Wolf scene was very theater oriented too.
Okay. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I mean the whole improv ethic of yes and was
Yeah.
hugely important for what we were able to do. It was like, oh, I'm gonna make a mud cave, and then like Benji was like, oh, I'm gonna make a tree. This is Swamp Town now. Like this is it was very like, let's just throw things together and see what happens. Um, yeah, and then that especially with the do return, required a lot of orchestration. I think there were close to 100 people that ended up working on the caves in particular, and the larger installation, even more. Um, so figuring out how to orchestrate a team and like design and build the proper thing, make it safe, make it structural,
Yeah.
but then make it compelling too. Um,
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
So let's go into that, because so now we're here, 2026. The functional, structural, safe, plus wild creativity. It feels like it's going to become really important for robotics, right? Let
Mm.
me share a little bit more about. where my head is at for the things I want to start creating. So I got these guys. Uh, we got this crazy thing that's going on. I love this because I bought this from a local shop here. So the Buenos Aires has tons of cypherpunks. They
Yeah,
have a lot of cypherpunks who are all working on these guys, ESP32s and computers and stuff like that. They
cool,
got a little servo motor, and I got this contraption. We're going to learn how to solder tomorrow, or not on Saturday.
amazing.
I'm going to learn how to solder because I don't know how to learn solder, so I'm going to learn how to solder tomorrow. And I have an assistant who will help us on Saturday who actually does know how to do it. So so we're building these robots, and I'm teaching these people to help me understand how what's going on. And the vibe coding thing is allowing me to understand the coding systems and things I've been banging my head against the wall for a long time. But now it's getting into physical space, and I'm seeing a lot of people talk about humanoid robots. Recently I was on a panel a couple weeks ago. I think you would like them. The name of the group is Eco Civilization, I think it was called.
Hmm.
And they brought up a really interesting point, which was like, we shouldn't be making these look in the form of human. Like there's a barrier there that shouldn't be crossed. I don't know if that's the case, but I think that it's important to think about. And so I'm like, okay, so then what else? What are the other form factors? And then you got animals, uh, or things that don't look like anything that we have now, um, and uh, some other ones that are coming to mind right now. But what do you think? Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with it? What do you think about robots? Do you think about robots? Uh, where's your head at here?
Yeah, gosh, I think about robots more and more these days,
Yeah,
with a certain amount of terror.
yeah,
I think it's a pretty wild moment, especially with the sort of capital machine behind it.
yeah.
Um,
Interesting. Woof.
not to mention the war machine.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people probably have seen this video recently of the humanoid robot like sorting packages on the conveyor belt, and yeah, I mean, it looks good, right? Like it looks like it knows what it's doing. Um, when you're talking about we shouldn't make them humanoid, I think that's really interesting. I'm really fascinated with early human history, and
mm,
there's a theory out there that the uncanny valley effect that we experience is sort of a palimpsest, a leftover from that era when we were among different species of Homo.
yeah. Whoa.
And yeah, so it was like this sort of, way of identifying like, oh, that's not sapiens, that's, Neanderthalensis or whatever, whatever they
Whoa.
called them back then. Um, which is, yeah, super fascinating to me. I mean, it's sort of sick too. I don't know why we felt the need to exterminate the other hominid, lineages.
Yeah, interesting.
Um, yeah, I think in terms of robots, like I think ultimately it's going to be about it's still going to cluster around
Yeah,
functionalism.
yeah.
Like what is the form that is actually necessary? In manufacturing, we've been using robotics for a long time, and I think that's only going to deepen. And honestly, I think that's fantastic. Like the idea that we're trying to preserve, the factory work or something like that. Certainly, I don't want mass people to be unemployed and not have a job or life purpose. But like, let's remember that the Industrial Revolution was awful, and that
Brutal.
like
Yeah,
absolutely,
totally brutal.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and like, you know, people being locked in a factory all day is not what we want for our
yeah,
species.
yeah.
And similarly for white collar work, I mean, there's been all this stuff um, about AI. I mean, we remember the movie Office Space. It's like we don't want this.
Yeah, yeah,
The transition, surely will
yeah, rough.
be
Yeah, yeah.
something to navigate. But um, I saw this robot this morning or yesterday that was like a blob. It was like sort of a ball that had all these little pistons that would like move out from the center, and it had like little rubberized balls on the end. And so
Whoa.
it was sort of like a tumbling thing.
Yeah.
It had like maybe 20 arms or something like that. It was really effective. It was able to like roll in whatever direction it wanted, like push objects around. I just think it's almost like the consideration of alien species in a more
Mm.
reduced form. It's like, what do we want a robot for? As horrific as it is, like I think the cardboard drones and like wooden drone, like there's something really wild about the usage of uh, these cheap materials. Actually,
Yeah.
cardboard was one of my later material obsessions.
When did that happen?
That was the beginning of the House of Eternal Return phase. So that
Okay.
was right after we incorporated. But I was still in this like dumpster diving mode. I was like, oh my god, we can get so much cardboard for free, and it's such an incredible material. So
Oh
stretchable.
man! All right, I want to talk about treasure hunts.
Treasure
'Cause-
hunts.
yeah, well, yeah. There's a question that comes immediately of like, were treasure hunts ever discover? I mean, I guess it was a ship, right? So it was a ship, so there was a treasure hunt element to it. Uh, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the ship was supposed to be like a time traveling research vessel. So treasure in terms of knowledge, or treasure in terms of
Okay.
experience, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and for the permanent House of Eternal Return and the Do Return, like really, there was always kind of this element of like we're definitely playing with that human dopamine system of like how do you make somebody so compelled to like open the next door, or like look through the files, or like oh, there's a computer on this desk, like let me see what's in here. um, so I mean, in the broad sense of treasure hunt like that, I mean, and then also with House of Eternal Return and later ones, we really leaned into this like idea of the story layer.
Yeah.
That like if you begin at the mailbox, like you see a postcard, and then it directs you to the next thing, the next thing. Omega Mart in Las Vegas, we leaned super heavy into that, and it was
Yeah.
very, very interesting, very compelling story.
So, okay, so treasure hunts and scavenger hunts. So recently, okay, so let me explain. So in 2021, I was in Nevada County, California, and which is similar to Santa Fe in a lot of ways. I'm just realizing that now. But so I it was during the pandemic. It was really crazy. I had to figure out a safe solution to live, and so I ended up getting some property out in the woods and parked my van on it, and was learning how to do all these things that a lot of permaculture, a lot of, but it was like all from a sort of like a really intense, like, oh, the world's ending, you got to figure this shit out, and so I did that, and I was trying to Airbnb out the cabin that I was living in, and I would live on the trail, live in the van. Then, so as part of this Airbnb, I was trying to set it up as a boutique experience on Airbnb. I wasn't going to go as far to do cannabis and all that different stuff, but it was like I was trying to think of experiences and interesting ways to do it, to entertain the guests and to have them be part of this kind of initial story.
Mm.
And so I ended up starting a treasure hunt. I think I had like 4 or 5 people go on the treasure hunt. One time it was really beautiful. There was a family from the Bay Area, an Indian family. They came up, and I asked them, "Oh, do you want to go on the treasure hunt?" And that was the first one where it's like, okay, they really wanted to go to treasure hunt. I hid some things on the at a coffee shop. I hid some I can't remember what I hid, but I hid it, and I had to go talk to the person at the coffee shop and asked them
Nice.
about the treasure. And I gave them a bag of coins because in Nevada County you can't pay with a credit card at the things to park right next to the place that I sent them.
Yeah.
And so they had the magic coins that basically allowed them to park legally uh, in a little leather satchel. And
That's
and
awesome.
so I hit it. They had a great time. At this time, I also had a bunch of animals on the property. So I had two goats and a sheep and an emu.
Whoa.
So yeah, and there's a little kid that loved the emu, so that was really fun. And that got me started. But then the Airbnb crashed, the real estate market crashed, everything crashed, and was thrown into the depths of a interesting experience. So then but I never lost sight of this treasure hunt idea. And then living in Argentina, living in Buenos Aires, Argentina is just full of treasure everywhere, and it's in the humanist sense. Like you can go around, people are really warm and friendly, and they have all these like slang that I've never heard in any other Spanish-speaking country because all the Italians came here and changed the character of the place.
Mm.
Uh, and So I started sending people on treasure hunts here, foreigners who were learning Spanish, to send them to the park and have to go talk to strangers. And then they would get the clue, and then they'd go to the store where I hid the treasure and get the treasure. So that was a long way to explain about treasure hunts and scavenger hunts, because the trash stuff, the dumpster diving stuff, that like uh, previously about a year ago, I was like, no, I don't want to do scavenger hunts. I want to do treasure hunts.
Mm.
But now I'm thinking, why not do both? Right? The
Mm.
scavenger hunt is for free, and the treasure hunt
Mm.
is like treasures paid. It's like all these different things.
Mm.
Uh, and the other thing that's relevant is that I've been seeing 3D printers that are taking PET plastic and creating 3D printed structures with it.
Mm.
And that seems really interesting. That seems like it actually might not only be really cool, but also this. It's not even no, it is conservation. Yeah, it's recycling the plastic to then
Mm.
create structures, basically. Which I
Mm. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I just threw a lot at you. What do you think?
Yeah. Gosh. Why I do just think that that experiential art form is still so
Oof.
prime. Like there's still so much that we're exploring in that as a as a species, as a culture. So I'm very happy to hear that you're creating scavenger hunts and treasure hunts.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think the like real life RPG kind of idea is really compelling. And I think I think there is going to be a huge wave of experiential uh, desire in
yeah,
in this decade, really. Like, with everything getting so much more digital,
yeah.
we're craving. I mean, we saw it post COVID for sure, but I think in a new way, there's going to be such a desire for human connection and for that kind of excitement of like, okay, you've got to go talk to these people in a language that you don't know yet. Um, yeah, the 3D printing thing is really fascinating to me right now too. I've just done a couple of my very first 3D prints.
What'd you print?
And I printed a s- uh, gosh, now I can't even remember the type of filament, but it's this flexible filament. I
Oh,
printed a book cover. I made a book this last semester in school about megafauna, actually, and about La Brea Tar Pits, which is the uh, number one collection of Pleistocene fossils in the world, which is amazing. And I kind of had been developing this megafauna obsession over the last couple of years, and then I'm suddenly in LA, and I realized like, oh, I'm like 10 miles from like this
the best.
incredible place. Yeah, incredible people doing this research. They're about to do this huge renovation of their museum as well. And so I made this book project and got the lead scientist to come to my final, and
Very cool.
uh, yeah, it was very very fun, very interesting. But I mean, yeah, that's off of 3D printing, and which is a huge thing in architecture school. I mean, the complexity of some of these models, especially for the undergrads and masters of architecture students, it's wild what they do.
Mm. What is something that an architect could 3D print that somebody who doesn't know, hasn't really studied that craft for a long time, would just have no clue what they can do?
Gosh, I mean, I don't even know if I would know. I mean, I'm just sort of observing this because my program is a little bit different. But like, you know, all of these like, wildly formed buildings that they're creating in Rhino or
Oh,
what have
interesting.
you in Blender, and
Whoa.
then printing it with different colors, figuring out how like these two forms can like interlock. Um, yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating the idea of the model in architecture. It's like show us the dollhouse first, you know.
Wait,
Um,
wait, I don't understand. What do you mean?
oh, an architectural model, like growing up with my dad as an architect, I was always foam core or paper or like little bits of balsa wood or something like that. Um, and now that's almost entirely subsumed by 3D printing, and it's such
Oh,
a
oh, the
key
dollhouse.
rhetorical.
So
Yeah,
you actually create a dollhouse
yeah,
first.
yeah. Well,
Or,
dollhouse, in quotes, but yeah, I mean, the idea that as a
whoa,
rhetorical step, you create a model to
whoa.
show like this is what the building will be like, and that's such an important way uh,
Oh
to get
man.
traction. Get stakeholders into it, and so like that's one of the things I think of architectural thinking that I'm learning to apply to climate and conservation stuff is like how do you show this in a compelling way first, and it doesn't have to be like a 3D model or like a physical model, but like you have to be able to show the story in different ways for different types of brains,
Man, that's really interesting.
isn't that?
How do you do it? How do you, so you, the dollhouse is really, but so did architects in the 1960s or whatever, were they building, they would buy, I think I remember this from when I was like 13 or 14 at a school I went to. And I remember seeing something an architect did in the front
Mm.
lobby, like
Mhm.
what you said. So that's the way it used to work, but nobody does that anymore?
Oh no, they still very much
Okay.
do.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just that it's yeah, like 3D printing is a big aspect of that now,
So you
which
can
really
3D print. Oh, interesting. Okay, so
totally,
you can.
yeah,
Oh, okay. But you
yeah.
learned how to do it. You learned how to do it before all the technology shifted it,
Oh,
basically.
I mean, just kind of casually, like hanging out in my dad's office or something like that. Yeah, or maybe that was child labor. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, man, it's so interesting. So yeah, the architect seems like it's the archetype of where we're headed.
Hmm.
A lot of other words that people have been throwing away are throwing around are orchestrator,
Mm.
conductor,
Hmm.
these things that are very meta. Like how do you design the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, what do you think of the archetype of the architect? What is the and what like I've been really interested in the negative downsides of not the negative, the just like the shadow aspect of archetypes. And the architect feels like the architect has some really interesting shadow side to it as well.
Mm.
Um, but uh, and I can go for it. So like the architect basically is the shadow side of it is like I am the all-seeing eye. I can create anything I want to create. Look at how beautiful these creations are, and kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of people are going to fall for that in the AI world,
Totally.
um, and are already doing it. And I already got a ground eye seen at some of the companies doing it, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of that going on in San Francisco, which is makes me enjoy not being there. Uh, uh, yeah, what do you think? What do you think about this archetype of the architect?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting to begin with the shadow. I mean, yeah, the hubris of the architect, or the kind of reputation of the architect as the prima donna,
Oh,
or
interesting.
this sort of like abstracted figure that like thinks they know everything.
Yeah, yeah. It's the man,
Um,
the Oz, right? The guy behind
yeah,
the curtain. Yeah,
yeah,
that's he's the
totally.
architect. Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, Yeah, I think that's, it's helpful actually. I like that you want to begin with the shadow, because it's sort of like it says, okay, there's the rock, don't crash into the rock, like the river
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
this way.
yeah.
um but I think, to point positive, as they say, like, you know the idea that we can learn to orchestrate, that we can learn to sort of see the larger aspects of a project, I think is really compelling, and a really compelling uh, piece of the era that we're in right now, as we sort of gain. I don't know if this is cheesy to say, but like global consciousness.
Ooh,
We're on this level of understanding. I mean, the first image of the Earth in its entirety from those astronauts. I mean, that was like
yeah,
67 or something. I should know that maybe, and that's what spawned the Earth Day movement. It was like,
yeah,
or
yeah.
like, Carl Sagan called it the pale blue dot. But this idea of thinking of the entire system of the Earth,
Mm,
thinking about how precious that is against the void of space, right? How incredibly, like, I don't know if you feel this, but like when I think about this, there's a huge feeling in my chest where I'm just like so incredibly grateful to be alive, and so incredibly in awe that we are in this moment where we can begin to grok
mm,
something as large as the entire planet.
mm,
And I also, there's some hubris in this too, that I don't think that we're necessarily the first generation to think of that. I mean, you look at some of these wisdom traditions, like
oof.
the Maya knew where the center of the galaxy was,
Whoa.
not observable by the naked eye. Or like, Ptolemy figuring out the circumference of the Earth based on shadows of obelisks, from two towns a certain number of miles apart from each other. So, I do think that, uh, and this is part of my own praxis at this point, is trying to integrate as much of the wisdom traditions, as much older knowledge, into my understanding of the world, uh, at the same time as I'm looking at these, high tech tools. Yeah, I mean, I think that we are on this developmental threshold as a species, where we're coming to grips with what our responsibility is, and how, it just used to be the other way around for so long. And this is kind of my obsession with the megafauna. For so long, 300,000 years of being anatomically modern humans, just as big a brain as you and I've got,
Wow.
same, same physical form, all of it. 300,000 years, right? And then just 12,000 years ago, we start civilization. And like, why? Like,
Yeah.
people say agriculture or something, but it's like, well, yeah, but why agriculture? And, the larger picture is that that was the end of the last ice age. There's a lot of, discussion and debate about what caused that. But if we just look at the effects, not the causes, you know, at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose nearly 400 feet
Mm,
worldwide.
mm,
Insane, insane. Like, and especially when you
mm.
consider that coastal living has always been desirable. I mean, you have access to the resources and the
Yeah, the
food of the
fish.
sea,
Yep.
as well as, um,
Mm,
and so, like, how much of our understanding of our own past was wiped out because that sea level rise was so
mm,
extreme.
mm.
Also, at the same time period, uh, we lost a huge number, over 100 genera worldwide of megafauna, animals over 99 pounds. And this is what I mean when I say it used to be the other way around. Like, we used to be the little guys, like we were
Up
constantly under
until 12,000 years ago? Up until 12,000 years ago? Yeah, well, because
more or
the
less,
more,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
More or less. I mean, there's a whole range of, how this all broke down, and the extinction event, the end Pleistocene extinction event lasted for, maybe 10,000 years, and from, you know about 15,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago, something like that. Um, but I mean, we lost these horrifying animals. I mean, the short-faced bear is like this
Short-faced
wild
bear.
thing. There was an American lion.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about it. But I want to get to this point of like we still I mean, and we talk about it like newscasters and science explainers will still say like that the anxiety epidemic that we've got right now is about our like anticipating saber-toothed tigers. Like they always bring up the saber-toothed tiger, and I think there's actually a lot of that if we look back to that time period. There's so much of our psychological development, yes, here we go, that is based on the like being around these animals. It's insane. It's insane. Like
Whoa.
we
Whoa.
used to be
Interesting.
underfoot of these beasts. And I mean, maybe this has implications for the discussion of robotics as well. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, well,
you
yeah,
know,
that's a good point.
well, in a
Um,
lot of ways, like we've recreated these massive beasts. It's just that they're now made out of steel and powered
yeah,
by
true.
gasoline, right? Diesel.
I don't know. No, it's Mecha, the Mecha robot. Yeah, yeah, because these are going to
Mm,
start. People are already starting to do this stuff. Uh,
gotcha.
so but I want to go back to the bear. I have a great story that I think you'll love. Let me show you. 2-ton capybara. So I've become just obsessed with capybaras and their cousin, the cuter Mara. Well, they're both very cute, and
Wow.
just like giant rodent, largest rodent. I remember the first time I saw one in Brazil in 2012. I was like, "What the fuck is that? Where's that going?" Look at it. Here it is. So there used to be a 2-ton capybara,
Oh my
and
God.
they were all over San Diego. So they made it all the way north of San Diego. Then some sort of, I'm not sure when it was happening. It's like maybe a million years, could be well, and then but then they got killed. The megafauna stuff that you're talking about, and then they were really big in South America, and they continue to be really big in South America until a bear came from North America and crossed the Darien Gap, and then started killing them all.
Wow.
And so I love that story because they're in San Diego. They're giant 2-ton capybaras
That's
running
insane.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And capybara are sort of known to be these very friendly animals, right? Like they
yeah,
love, like other animals love them.
yeah. Which is
Yeah.
South America in general. Like South America, is just
Mm,
everybody's really friendly. Everybody's really
mm,
relaxed. People get
mm,
along. There's not much war, although that might
mm,
change.
mm.
But yeah, okay. So we got about 10 minutes left. Megafauna, man. The conservation part is really interesting because how do we figure out what to conserve and what to grow,
Mm.
and like how to innovate but then conserve as well, right? Like where can we do a decision matrix, like, and I'm not asking for these answers beforehand because it's impossible to do that, but like what uh how do we conserve things and innovate? Well, is it an issue to, so the mora, let's go into that. Let me show you the mora. You might already know what it is, but listeners might know what it. No, okay. So this was in New Zealand, and it was in New Zealand. No, that's not it. Mora bird, New Zealand. Uh, it was a 10-foot emu. So it was a
Mm.
giant emu,
Yes. Yes.
and it was like up until recently, and maybe it was going back to what you're talking about, the Pleistocene. Uh, like, if we could bring that back, would that be something we should do as a species to bring back animals that go away?
I mean, it's a fascinating question. It's a fascinating question. I'm not sure if you're familiar with colossal biosciences. They're the
No.
ones that claim to de-extinct the dire wolf.
Oh, okay. Colossal bios.
And in theory, I'm personally I'm down.
Yeah.
Like I think we should bring back the
Yeah.
mammoth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should bring back the short-faced bear. As horrifying as it is, but when you actually look at what they're doing, there's a lot of skepticism about
Yeah.
the technology that they're actually doing. Did they actually de-extinct something? No, not really. They altered a few genes
Uh,
in a red wolf. Um,
yeah,
interesting.
interesting. Can you do it? Can you even do it? Can we even like whether it's still possible at all? But yeah, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, so like I'm down. Maybe this is a slightly chaotic alignment of mine, but like I'm kind of down. Like let's try.
Yeah.
um, but I'm also a little skeptical of what actually exists.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it would change things. It would change society. Like this past semester, I did this speculative project about turning the Great Plains into a massive biopreserve of
Ooh.
de-extincted megafauna, and got into the history, the conservation paleobiology aspect. Just touched on the cultural aspect of this was a managed food system by the Plains tribes. In 1800, at that late date, there were 30 to 60 million bison,
Hmm.
and in the Great Plains.
Hmm.
And it was actually an active war
Hmm.
against the tribes that
The tribes against the bison.
against the tribes. They killed the bison. That was their food source. I
Got
mean,
it.
it's horrific,
Yeah.
horrific act. And there's some pretty insane pictures of the stacked up skulls of bison.
Whoa.
Um, and you look at like the food system
Whoa.
that we have in the Great Plains now,
Yeah.
and it's this incredibly broken thing where we grow monoculture crops in the east and then have rangeland in the west, broadly speaking. And
Hmm.
this is maybe too much to get into in these last couple of minutes, but if you look at planned holistic management, rotational grazing strategies that have come up and driven this grass-fed revolution in the
Oh.
last couple of decades, uh, that's based on herd movement. Like the idea is that predators keep the herd bunched together and moving, and when you do that, the grass has time to uh, you know rebound after it gets trampled and eaten. Yeah, the law of the second bite, as they say. When cows are just let to pasture, they eat a plant and then go away, and then when the plant regrows from its root energy, they eat it again, and then that plant dies. But if they move on for a season and then
Hmm.
come back, that plant is rebounding in this beautiful way, building soil, all of this stuff. So comparing that kind of more natural system that has this increasing fecundity built into the process, compared to monocrop agriculture that requires all of these external inputs, Haber-Bosch fertilizer, that's electrified out of the air, pesticide, herbicide, electric beasts that harvest
Whoa.
combines, tillage, all this stuff. And then there's all these toxic outputs
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You've got runoff, you're degrading the soil through tillage. um, Not to mention this is just like a clone. Like this is, these crops are like genetically modified, very
Whoa.
strange, and then you're using that to feed, the animals in the West, uh, and that's a whole toxic system as well, with fecal blood pools and
Yeah.
antibiotic laden meat, and so like so this is what I'm really passionate about, is like how do we look at a system like that large,
Mm.
continental scale, and say, okay, this is messed up the way that we're doing it currently. Like what if we made make America have
Mm.
a giant herd of bison in the center again, like
This is great because, and if you have to go at the hour or at the half hour, let me know. So okay, the do you know the Amazon was tended by the tribes? Did you? Yeah, you're
yeah,
aware. Yeah.
totally.
Uh, and there's this. I like tried to go as far down the rabbit hole as I could. There was the one of the conquistadors that made it down with Cortez to Iran, not Iran, to the Andes, Ecuador. They got they were in the mountain and then they went down a river and then they couldn't get back up the mountain, and then they were
Mhm.
stuck in the Amazon. So they're
Yeah.
the first Europeans to ever make it through the Amazon all the way back.
Yeah.
And since they were the first, they were going down this Amazon, and they
Mhm.
related stories that couldn't be verified for another 30 or 50 or 100 years or something like that of giant civilizations that were out there. And when they got to Europe, they were like, oh, these guys, they don't know. Nobody ever saw any of that, that it came back from another thing. It's not real. But nobody had ever been to the Amazon before. And they had, and now with LiDAR, they've gone and mapped it, and there are giant mounds, and the
Yeah.
after effects of a civilization, but that civilization did not build in stone, it did not build it built in wood, and that wood
Yeah.
was a biomaterial, and it was in the jungle, so it all disappeared. uh, it's just like that. It's just like crazy things like that like the whole
Absolutely.
Amazon is a tended environment. Like we can go back to that, right? Like there's nothing that stops us from being able to do that, right?
I mean, yeah, arguably. I think there's an interesting discussion around that whole thing. Because I have heard people say, like, oh, when you make the argument that the Amazon was one giant garden, it makes it
Mm,
sound like, oh, well, we can just replant, like, let's cut down and
mm,
replant. But of
mm.
course, like, that's, asinine. Like, there's no way to do that. It takes
Yeah,
incredible knowledge that is largely lost,
lost.
and
Yeah, the knowledge.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, and also it takes time. It takes time to like really develop these systems. I mean, and some of the technology, like, have you heard of Terra Preta,
Yes. Yeah.
or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Amazonian dark earths, as they
Yeah.
call it?
Yeah.
This was this, yeah, for everybody listening, like this technology of essentially like burning a midden, like smoldering, all of this refuse and trash, and there's all kinds of weird additives that they found in there that
Whoa.
created this incredibly potent earth. Uh, the charcoal, creates these little micro pockets for different fungi and bacteria to live in that then can expand out of, and um, and they find that all over the Amazon. But yeah, I mean, like, so what was a culture like? I mean, maybe that's not even civilization at that point. That might be something else. What was a culture that could come up with something like that, and do alter the landscape, create a synthetic landscape on
Cool.
that scale? And of course, like, we have to give credit to all of the other species that come together to create the Amazon, right? It's not like, this is not a human centric view, really. It's actually much more about humans being embedded in a web
Mm, mm,
together with all of these other species, and but playing an important role and learning how to orchestrate.
hmm. Man, history is so wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Anything you're working on that you want to share with people? Anything you're really excited about?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, just these types of things. Yeah, I'm so excited to keep thinking about, how can we lean into what it means to be human in this era. I
Mm,
just think it's such a fascinating problem to think about. What kind of a culture do we want to exist in, and what kind of ideas do we want to promote? And really, I think there's so much to be said about how do we relate to other forms of life in
yeah.
this time. Really, it all comes back to that for me. Like, that's the kind of fundamental issue that I see with humanity now. I mean, gosh, there's so much, right? There's so much to focus on. But when I take a deep time perspective, uh, I see that we need, now more than ever, to uh, create what I've been calling recently a biophilic culture, an ecophilic culture. Uh, you know, Loving of other species, loving of our home, um, and that requires a lot of things of us. I think that requires a certain psychological shift, um, And I think that requires shifts in how we design, um, and much more. And it's going to take all of us to sort of sort that out
Mm.
in big and small ways.
Thank you so much.